What's going on, class? I will be presenting the second part of the World War II unit, and this part is the European theater of World War II. So basically, we will start from the beginning. I did this before, but it deleted, so we're gonna do it again. On the European and North African theater of World War II, 11th grade United States history class, little prelude to the United States involvement in Europe. After World War I, a series of arrangements were made to ensure post-war stability in Europe. Germany did not abide by these arrangements, and they annexed territory in the Rhineland, Czechoslovakia, and eventually invading Poland in 1939 to start World War II. Hitler at the time was systematically killing anyone who he proved to be undesirable. The list included Jews, homosexuals, gypsies, and black and Slavic people. America stayed isolationist in the war, but condemned Hitler and provided financial support to the Allies in Europe. The United States entry into World War II. After Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, the United States joined World War II. Thousands of men joined and were drafted. The United States would join, aligning with the Allies, including France, Belgium, Britain, Russia, China, and Australia. At A large number of the United States servicemen, mainly the United States Army, would serve in Europe. North Africa Campaign. Invasion of North Africa. After failed negotiations with Stalin to open up a second front in France, the United States, along with Britain, invaded Italy and Nazi-controlled northern Africa. And you can see on the right side, right over here, is the different countries that controlled this area. Um, and the majority of the fighting was in French Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Tunisia. That was the brunt of the fighting. Some in Egypt. Um, the United States joined in 1942, and the Africa campaign began in 1940. The French were on both sides. They were on the Allied side and the Axis side. Vichy France was the Axis side, and the Allied side was Free France. After a few years of combat, the North Africa campaign ended in May of 1943. The United States had 2,715 dead. The British had 6,441 missing. The Americans had 6,441 missing. The British had 35,478 casualties. The French had 16,000 dead. And then for the other side, the Germans had 18,594 dead. The Italians lost 1,367 guys. So after North Africa, this would lead into the Africa campaign, which was a bloody and pretty pointless campaign. It really didn't do much to defeat Germany. It was just a bloodbath of battles that wouldn't really accomplish much. And from January 1943 to May of 1945, the Allies embarked on a bloody campaign. The invasion of Sicily and the battles would go into the heart of Italy and up to the end of the war. Um, the battles were in Anzio, Monte Cassino, and Bernhardt Line. The front was heavily criticized by Stalin because Stalin wanted the Allies to open up a second front in France much earlier in the war than they did. Um, so the American lost 25,000 in this campaign, 60,000 wounded. German and Italian lost about 400,000 dead, and a million captured and 600,000 wounded. Also, Mussolini would be killed, and his body would be displayed in public in 1945. The D-Day invasion of Normandy. After 2 years, FDR resisted and finally gave in to the Second Front in France. The Americans agreed to land on the shores of Normandy on June 6, 1944, along with their allies. It's the largest invasion force in modern history, with almost 2 million soldiers. Paratroopers would land behind the enemy lines that night, while in the morning, the other soldiers would land on the beaches of Juneau, Omaha, Sword, and Utah. They would come under heavy fire by the British machine guns and artillery. If you ever want to watch anything on this, Saving Private Ryan is a really good movie. It shows actually this exact battle scene right here in the picture in the lower right hand corner. Shows that exact battle scene, how brutal it was. And there's also a show, it was on HBO, called Band of Brothers, and it shows the paratroopers' perspective from World War II. It's really interesting. By the end, the Allies would successfully reclaim the Atlantic Wall, liberate France at a heavy price. The D-Day cost for Americans was 6,800 dead, 1,200 of them paratroopers, and then 10,000 wounded. The Germans lost 9,000 and had 30,000 wounded and 100,000 captured. Operation Market Garden. On September 17, 1944, the Allies embarked on an unsuccessful mission to encircle the heart of the German industry called the Ruhr, in hopes of cutting off supplies to the Germans. It was broken down into two parts, which was Market Garden, paratroopers landing to seize bridges and terrain, and Garden, which were ground forces to push the Germans east. The Allies did not anticipate the strength of the German force, so the Germans basically what they did is they retreated a little bit. The Americans actually got to liberate Holland, but they regrouped and they forged a counterattack, and this was devastating for the Allies, and it delayed the war. Although the Allies did not claim victory, they would later take the area and push back Germans later on. And the Americans, I couldn't find dead and wounded, so I just had the casualty rate. So this is including dead and wounded, missing 15,326 casualties, and then the Germans had less. This is one of the rare times the Germans had less. 13,000 casualties. Struggles of Market Garden were a prelude to what was to come in the Ardennes Forest in the following months. Battle of the Bulge. The Bulge would be the bloodiest battle the Americans would fight in World War II. It became one of the worst winters in United States history, even worse than Valley Forge in the American Revolution. The Bulge was the last major offensive campaign of the Germans of World War II. On December 16, 1944, the Americans were caught completely by surprise while the Germans broke through the Ardennes forest, crippling the American lines. One American division, the 101st Airborne, was completely surrounded for 2 weeks without supplies. They heroically they heroically avoided German capture. On January 25th, Americans broke through the Ardennes in Belgium. 19,000 were killed and 47,000 were wounded, and the British lost 60,000 or 100,000 wounded. Concentration camp liberations. The Allies would. I'll get to that after, actually. As the Allies pushed into Germany, they would discover the horrors of the Nazi regime. Soviets were the first to liberate concentration camps in Europe. The Americans would soon face the horrors firsthand. Dozens of concentration camps containing Jews, POWs, Gypsies, Slavs, and suspected communists were liberated. Many contained crematoriums. An estimated 6 million Jews and 5 million others were systematically killed from 1933 to 1945, and black Germans were sterilized. They weren't put in concentration camps for the most part, but they were sterilized so they couldn't have children. The Hitler's Eagle's Nest. The Americans would skip out on the final invasion of Berlin, allowing the Soviets to fight the battle, which was a really, really costly battle. The Soviets lost 80,000 men invading Berlin and capturing the city. But the Americans went to Hitler's Eagle's Nest. It was called the Kleinsteinhaus in German. The Americans would stay around Hitler's favorite vacation spot for the remainder of the war and other outposts in Germany. Here, soldiers enjoyed large liquor collections of Adolf Hitler and brought home trophies from his favorite vacation spot. They also got themselves into trouble. Soldiers were accidentally died due to alcohol-related accidents. As many as 50 men died from having too much time on their hand and little direction on what they should be doing. End of World War II. So the nuclear bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and it would send all the Americans home from the Pacific and Europe within the following couple of years. Some of the Americans men have not seen home for 3 years and had many of their fellow soldiers die fighting the Germans. The total cost of American lives in Europe would be around 200,000, with 500,000 more injured. And that's pretty much it. And this is the Nagasaki bombing, this is the Hiroshima bombing. And just a quick little snippet on this photo. This is a very, very famous photo of the soldier kissing the girl at Times Square. But she did not know who he was. She just grabbed her and started making out with her. So it was like some early 1940s sexual assault. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this class and just get ready for the tests coming up, and thanks.